Now, millions of hardworking Americans are getting ready to file their taxes, but thanks to loopholes in our tax code for billionaires, paying taxes can be optional. This has to stop. Now, last week, President Biden proposed a new minimum tax to ensure that the very, very rich pay at least 20% in taxes every year on their income. I've long called for a tax on wealth, not just income, of ultra-millionaires and billionaires. The president's proposal is different, but it is a giant step forward. Now, critics claim that the IRS just isn't up to the task of administering a tax like this because it requires assessing the value of complicated assets and doing this calculation for many taxpayers. This is a question about your agency's competence, so I want to ask you about it, Commissioner. In fact, the IRS already has a lot of experience examining the assets of the ultra-wealthy. For more than 100 years, the IRS has valued the property of multimillionaires in order to apply the estate tax. So, Commissioner Rettig, about how many estate tax returns have been filed with the IRS in the last 10 years?
Just under 300,000.
Just under 300,000? All right. And do you know anything about the combined worth of those offhand?
I don't.
Okay. I think the estimate will be well over $1 trillion. Does that make sense?
Not from my private practice experience.
Okay.
I'll go with it.
All right. For comparison, the president's billionaires tax would only apply to 20,000 taxpayers. Now, the estate tax has got to be generally harder to administer because by definition, it applies to new taxpayers every time it is paid because it isn't triggered until someone dies and an asset is transferred to an heir. By comparison, the president's billionaires tax would mostly apply to the same taxpayers year after year, making valuation much simpler. Some of the valuations that the IRS already does can be quite complex. In 2020, the IRS completed 1,454 estate tax audits, including 770 estates valued at over $10 million. So, Commissioner Rettig, what kinds of assets do the IRS investigators examine in these estate tax audits that they're performing every year?
The examiners in that space are known as estate tax attorneys. They're sophisticated examiners. They're among our best. And estate tax is based on a valuation at a point in time, date of death, or either 6 months after the date of death. And the examiners look to see if the values were appropriate, if the deductions were appropriate, et cetera, et cetera. In appropriate cases, they may bring in engineers, which are really economists and valuation specialists. And
say a word about the kind of property that they look at and value.
It's the valuation of the assets and discounts people claim for the assets.
So like
to be most of the issues.
Mansions, ownership of businesses.
Virtual currency.
There you go. There you go. So the IRS has lots of experience valuing assets like mansions and expensive art and private companies, exactly the assets that would be subject to the president's billionaire tax. But to make anything work, it is critical that we fund the IRS so that it has all the tools it needs to ensure that the ultra-wealthy pay the taxes that they owe. And that is why President Biden's and congressional Democrats have proposed $80 billion in funding for the IRS. Commissioner Rettig, how would additional funding turbocharge the IRS's ability to take on wealthy tax cheats or to administer a new tax on billionaires like the kind that the president has proposed?
We have the most sophisticated financial examiners on the planet, and they're also the most dedicated folks on the planet in this particular space. We need to support them by providing them meaningful tools, resources, training, and at some point in time, when I started in practice in 1981, the IRS was a place that people wanted to go and earned their stripes, if you will, and then maybe some left for private practice, some certainly stayed. We need to get back to that, and the funding would certainly help us get to that level.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your leadership on this, Commissioner Rettig. We need to fund the IRS to make sure that wealthy tax cheats pay what they owe. But we also need to fix our broken tax rules. Billionaires who pay a lower tax rate than public school teachers are freeloading, and we need to make it stop. The president's proposal for a minimum income tax on billionaires is about exactly that. And I'm with him on this. The American people are with him on this. Let's get it done. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner, Nevadans are facing higher